Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the Florida Panthers as they are an interesting team here in the 2022-2023 NHL season, as they're not one of the teams that everybody's talking about right now. You look around. Specifically in the Atlantic Division, everybody's talking about Boston and Toronto, and Tampa seems to be back where they were last season, really the last couple years. But the Florida Panthers, who won the Atlantic Division, won the President's Trophy last year, are not that same team right now, as they are a team that is not where they thought they would be. The expectations were a little bit higher, especially with the success of last year, and the Florida Panthers look like a team that could maybe even be selling at this year's trade deadline, depending on how things go. We'll take a look at the standings, where they're currently at, what I think is going to happen with the Panthers. We'll go over that today. So the Florida Panthers record, for context here, are 23, 21, and 6. That's the record with 52 points. They currently sit fifth in the Atlantic Division behind Boston, Toronto, Tampa, Buffalo. I'm sure you didn't expect that one to be happening here at the end of January. At this point, you didn't expect that. They are currently fifth in the division. So the Florida Panthers, it's been a weird season for the Cats. And, when you look at their record, it's not really that great. Their goals for, they're scoring a ton of goals. They're fourth in the National Hockey League. Goals against is the issue. And that's really where this story starts for the Florida Panthers. Their defense hasn't been great, but their goaltending has been really below. It's really been subpar. Spencer Knight got actually sent down to the Charlotte Checkers. That's how bad things got with Spencer Knight. And Sergei Bobrovsky has not played like Sergei Bobrovsky. So, this has been a really tough stretch for the Panthers, and I got to be honest, unless they make any big moves, nothing's really going to happen here. They remind me a lot of the Los Angeles Kings right now on the West Coast, in the sense that we expected them to maybe be a playoff team and a team that was fighting for the top of that division, maybe even. But their goaltending is really holding them back. Their actual numbers aren't that bad, but the goaltending just has not been good. And for the Florida Panthers right now, I got to say, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs with how they're playing. And I think maybe they're one of those teams that is willing to make the big move at the deadline. And I do think that is possible. So what are some of the problems with the Panthers? So injury-wise, it's been a rough couple of weeks here for the Florida Panthers, as they definitely have the injury bug. Sam Bennett's out with a lower body injury. Sergei Bobrovsky's also out with a lower body injury. Anthony Duclair, we probably will not see him return. He could potentially return in December, January, and that was back in June last year. Duclair is not back. Patrick Hornquist was out with an upper body injury last year. And Eric Stahl is on the injured reserve, and that was just a couple weeks ago. So the Florida Panthers have struggled with the injury bug. Their goaltending hasn't been very good. And this team is never really, for most of the season, it's been kind of just, they win a couple games, then they lose a couple games. They win a couple games, then they lose a couple games. And in December, they had a rough December. They really didn't play that well going into the new year. This is a team that just couldn't find a way to put it together. And when you look at their special teams and, power play, penalty kill, their penalty kill is not good. And that's, again, that, your best penalty killer is your goaltender, and I think that's been something they've struggled with. But definitely, give some accountability to the defense. That has not been good enough either. Their power play has actually been pretty good. It's above league average, a little over 24%. League average is 22%, so they're actually doing well there. This has never been the problem for the Panthers, though, is they're able to score goals. It's the other stuff, right? Another key factor, listen, let's give some accountability to the forward group, because, they're scoring goals, but, Alexander Barkov's a point per game. And normally you would say that's, okay, a point per game, above a point per game, he's still playing well. But again, with a guy like Alexander Barkov, who everybody says is this underrated superstar, and now he's not really underrated because everybody talks about him, that doesn't really work if he's not the top guy. And listen, no discredit. I think Barkov's a great player, but he hasn't been at the same production he has been over the past couple of years. And maybe that's the lack of good players around him. I don't know. Matthew Tkachuk has played well in his first season with the Panthers, though. He's already got 62 points this season. He's tied for the team in goals with Carter Verhaeghe, which that guy really, I remember watching him in Bridgeport in the AHL with the Sound Tigers. It's crazy to see how his career has turned around. Really a great story to see there. But this Florida Panthers team, your fourth leading point producer is Brandon Montour. And yeah, he's been very good, but again, that's where you want to see guys like Sam Reinhart and Sam Bennett, and they're not there. Speaking of those two guys, I think if the Panthers make any moves at the deadline, I think they could trade one or potentially both of those players, depending on if they sell at the deadline. I think if they're really that far out of the playoffs, I think the Panthers are going to kind of wait and see. They're going to give this team enough rope to kind of hang themselves or let themselves really get going. I think it's going to be, they're going to give them enough time to decide whether we're going to go for it or not. I think that, the Florida Panthers have to be really careful with what they do here, because if they buy at the deadline too early and then they continue to struggle, well, then that was a mistake. And then, again, if they wait too long and then they don't sell the assets that they want, again, then you kind of run the risk of teams maybe not making that trade, and now you have to wait till the summer to make some of those moves. So the Florida Panthers are in a weird spot. I expect them to go for it. I really do. I could see a guy like Bennett or Reinhart going in a trade somewhere, like a big splash trade for the Panthers. I could see them going after a Bo Horvat. Maybe even a guy like Ryan O'Reilly. I think that would be really interesting. There's a couple guys that the Cats will be looking in on here over the next couple of weeks, but they got to win some games. And I think that lack of stable goaltending right now is a very obvious need for concern. As much as we talk about wanting to add a Horvat or an O'Reilly, none of that matters if they don't have a good goaltender. So if they are in the goalie market, you look at a guy like Kirill Vejmelka over in Arizona. I think he's a pretty good goalie. Depending on what happens with the New York Islanders, a team they're kind of fighting up for a wild card spot with, you wonder if a guy like Semyon Varlamov, again, he hasn't put up the best numbers this year, but I would say he's one of the better goalies on the market right now. So the Florida Panthers will have some options, but they need to get a goaltender. And whether that's internally or externally, they need to fix what's going on in between the pipes if they want to fix anything else on this team and maybe even consider getting back in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The good news, though, for the Panthers is they're only 4 points back of a playoff spot, and really the only two other teams they have to fight with that are around them, or three teams, I guess, is the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Buffalo Sabres, and the New York Islanders. And you look at those four teams, I would say on paper, the Florida Panthers are the best roster made up, like the best makeup of a roster of those four teams I mentioned. So let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think of the Florida Panthers? Do you think they make the playoffs this year? Do you think they miss? Let me know your guys' thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time. Peace.